The Wolf of Wall Street just celebrated its 10th anniversary last month, and I wanted to watch and review this movie last month, but between the holidays and everything else I watched that month, I just didn't get a chance to, but I finally watched it, and here's my review of it. Now, this film is directed by Martin Scorsese, in which it is a true story of Jordan Belfort, who is a stockbroker that had a pump and dump scheme. He brings a bunch of people under his wing and teaches them the art of stockbrokering and basically scamming people out of their money. They all become rich, successful, and just have this ridiculous lifestyle that they all have now that they're all rich. But eventually this rich lifestyle doesn't last once it reaches the eyes of the IRS, and Jordan Belfort's under their microscope. And it's basically the classic rise and fall of a criminal that gets in over his head, and his pride and ego gets the best of him. Kind of like Scarface. Now, I remember when I saw this movie in the theater 10 years ago. I saw it with a friend of mine. This was one of those movies that kind of flew under my radar, but I've always been a fan of Leonardo DiCaprio as an actor, and I do admire Martin Scorsese as a filmmaker. And when I first saw this film, it was one of my favorite movies of 2013. It was one of the most fun movies I've seen, despite how long it is. I really did enjoy and have fun watching. I really enjoyed the ridiculousness of this film, but also the compelling crime drama within this film. And the dark comedic elements definitely lend to this story. And Martin Scorsese, he's also one of those filmmakers where he's not one of particularly my favorites, but at the same time, I admire him despite all his comments on the state of modern filmmaking. And after watching more of his films, I appreciate the filmmaking put on display here. Like after watching films like Goodfellas, Casino, and some of his other films for the first time, I see his filmmaking here and how it's kind of like this and how he's improved over the decades. This film definitely does improve why he's still one of the best legendary filmmakers of all time. Because basically he took some of the exaggerations and ridiculousness of some of his other films and put it in this film, because this film is relatively modern. I mean, the story of the actual crime itself happened relatively not too long ago, so it's still fresh in some people's mind. But Leonardo DiCaprio plays Jordan Belfort, in which he's a stockbroker, he's hungry, and then once he gets a taste of the stockbroker life and he just learns all the evil and sleaziness that comes with being a stockbroker, he basically takes that and the way he motivates his fellow stockbrokers and motivates them to just do all these heinous acts is just, in a way, kind of inspiring and motivational. And not that I would ever do that, but it's just the way he amps people up and motivates them. I'm just sitting there with a pen and paper like, yes, yes. And Leo definitely brought that to this role, and probably not too far from the actual Jordan Belfort, who does make a cameo in this movie at the very end. And it's a shame because I really felt like he had the Oscar for this movie in the bag, but he lost to his own co-star in this movie by being in another film, and that is Matthew McConaughey. And Matthew McConaughey, he's basically the stockbroker that teaches him everything he knows, and how Jordan Belfort, he goes forward. He takes all those lessons and goes forward. But Matthew McConaughey, for the little screen time he has in this movie, he definitely does make an impact. Jonah Hill, I remember seeing him in this film and thinking, like, wow, he's really trying to break away from what people are used to seeing him like in movies like Superbad. It was definitely different for him, and seeing where his career is now and seeing how far he's come is just fascinating. John Bernthal plays a drug dealer that Jordan Belfort knows personally, and it's also fascinating seeing him in this movie because now I know him as a Punisher, and he's been in other stuff here and there, but just knowing that, wow, the earliest I saw him in was in this movie, and I didn't even know that he would go on to be the Punisher. And John Bernthal, he's definitely a great actor in his own right, and what he was given in this film definitely left an impact and vital to the story. Kyle Chandler is the cop that's investigating Jordan Belfort and all his schemes, and just that aspect of the story, and just watching Jordan Belfort's whole rich life fall apart all because of this person trying to take him down and tracking down everything. It makes this B plot of the movie just even more compelling and fun to watch. Because Jordan Belfort, at every turn that he might be in danger of getting caught, he does something even more ridiculous, or something ridiculous happens. Like the scene where him and Jonah Hill's character takes the Quaaludes and it has a high dosage to the point where he's just paralyzed and trying to get home and stop him and try to stop him from being on the phone, because at that point in the story he is being wired. But that was a highlight of the movie. Kristen Milotti is in this film, in which he plays the first wife of Jordan Belfort, but I first knew this actress from being on the last season of How I Met Your Mother, which at the time when this movie came out, How I Met Your Mother, the last season was being aired, so it was just cool seeing her in this movie. But then the first time I saw her was on that show, and just seeing her career start to go up from there. But as far as the women goes in this movie, of course there's Margot Robbie, and I thank this movie, and more specifically Martin Scorsese, for introducing the world to Margot Robbie. And when you saw her in this movie, I'm pretty sure a lot of heterosexual men, myself included, was like, but again, it's also just fascinating just revisiting this film and seeing Margot Robbie in this movie and seeing how her career has since taken off since this movie. Like she's Harley Quinn, Barbie, I, Tonya. This movie really put her on the map, and it kind of made her the new it girl or leading girl. And it all started with this movie right here, and she was great in this movie in her own right. I love this movie when it came out 10 years ago, but after watching even more Martin Scorsese films, I appreciate this movie even more now for Martin Scorsese's filmmaking that's put on display here in his techniques of storytelling. To me, this is without a doubt a modern Scorsese classic. It brings us an iconic performance by Leonardo DiCaprio. It gave the role Margot Robbie, and overall it's a fun dark comedy. That's based on a true story. I'm gonna give The Wolf of Wall Street the hands up emoji because it is a masterpiece.